Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from here. Good to have you all join us today. Welcome to week 2, Thursday speaker session for Unit Masters program. Really excited to see you all here again today. So today we'll have Unit co-founder Yip join us for today's session. Okay. So I am not muted and I can hear. So anyone else can hear me? Okay, just put it in the chat if you can hear me. Great, thank you, Vikas. Okay, so thank you for joining us again today for week 2 of our Thursday speaker session. And today we have Yip Unit Network co-founder join us to talk about the Web3 ecosystem, right? And so I'll be giving a short brief about Yip. Like I said earlier, Yip is the co-founder of Unit Network, which is powering Unit Masters. Yip is an award-winning blockchain influencer who is known for her work in educating thousands of students in blockchain literacy and providing several hundred scholarships to women to attend global blockchain conferences. Previously, Yip has led strategy and digital transformation for the world's leading banks and insurance providers at McKinsey and Co. She is the author of the entrepreneurship book, Beautiful Brains, and she holds an MBA from INSEAD Business School. So thank you so much, Yip, for joining us today, and we're very pleased to have you.
Thank you very much, Agama, and welcome everyone. If I may ask you to turn on your camera if you are available to be present with us, like visually, that would be very nice to generate a sense of common purpose here for the next 30-35 minutes. Very wonderful to see all of you. Some friendly faces, people we know of, and maybe new friends. Well, welcome to the second week of Unit Masters, which is a 6 weeks journey where we curated the content each week with a special purpose of helping you gain blockchain literacy in the shortest amount of time possible. And gaining blockchain literacy is not as easy as it seems, because blockchain and blockchain ecosystems are complex systems. They're complex, organic, human-built ecosystems. Right. So what it takes us to make certain decisions about what part of the ecosystems will we cover together in 6 weeks. And you could imagine Unit Masters to be something like your driver's license, like voluntary driver's license, to navigate through a very complex world in the most safe and secure way. And this is also how we designed it. And when we think about Web3, what is Web3? I think you learned last week with my co-founder Michael already. What is Web3 and the token economy? Maybe let me give you a brief recap. And then let's talk about ecosystems and what are the skills required to navigate in that complex ecosystem of technology of the future. So when you think about Web3 is basically an evolution of what we already know as Web2 nowadays. That we, all of us here together from all different parts of the world. I'm dialing in from Germany right now. Joy is maybe dialing from the US. We have Agama from Nigeria. And I don't know where everybody else is from, but it looks like a quite diverse crew, also from the names. Mohammed is saying, oh, from Nigeria too. Exactly. So there's many people from across the globe using technology and internet to connect and to be able to exchange communication, right? Visual communications, images, a video, moving images, and text messages. So thanks to the internet and to Web2, thanks to our mobile devices here, we can exchange communication in a very cost-efficient way. And the next step is to say, what is actually then built next? And Web3 is a proposition to say that, wow, after we've made it very cost efficient around the globe to exchange not only information, to democratize access to information, to democratize access to global communication, to remote communication, to collaborative working together. What is next? And Web3 holds the promise of creating that internet of value, the place where we can come together remotely, work together remotely on projects, and share the value that is created by the collective, by a group of people, by decentralized autonomous organization or cooperative, or whatever modality is there, to all those contributors who have contributed to creating that value. But that's the promise of Web3, the evolution of the internet. And Web3 is built with ecosystems. So it requires a few understandings and predictions and hypotheses about what is the future of work. And the future of work might or might not be different to how we are working together nowadays. And we've seen already a lot of trends, mega trends throughout the past years, that people are now starting to work less time period with their employees. My parents' generations, my boss's generations, when I was still working in a corporate life, was the traditional career was entering into a company and then staying in that company for 10, 20, 30 years until you retire. And many of you come from emerging economies where these traditional models don't even, have not really been there in that way, the same way we had experienced it in Germany. You might have even grown up inside economies where already the economy is structured in a way that jobs are run like on a more informal basis, from project to project to project, with shorter amount of project, the duration of a project and engagement, like a working engagement, right? And overall in the global space, we will be seeing more and more of that coming in what we call the gig economy. And what we will also see in the future is that this gig economy and projects of people using internet technologies to collaborate on projects together, creating values together, requires different business models and different models to spread the value. What we have seen with e-commerce, for example, coming up about 20 years ago, is that all of a sudden there was this new business model where books were sold online, Amazon, and people didn't really know, wow, how would that work? That we live in a world in which we don't go to a bookshop anymore to buy a physical product of a book, but now we can have it shipped over the internet. How is it when all of a sudden we don't have to hold books anymore in our hands, but we can read them online on our computer devices, right? So that is kind of the new future we're looking into. And today's session shall be about the ecosystems and what it requires to thrive in these ecosystems. So the first principle I want to share with you or invite you to think about is one of mindset of the future, a mindset to be successful for that economy of the future. And it might seem very simple, but actually when you think deeply about that and act according to it, it might put you in front of a lot of changes that you might need to make in your own life. And that mindset shift is about the shift from being a consumer to becoming a contributor. It's a macro shift. So no way to escape it. It will reach us in any kind of way. And the question is, do we want to be like overwhelmed by it, by taken away by it? Or do we want to be those actually leading that shift as pioneers, right? So what is that shift from being a consumer to becoming a contributor? So in a lot of situations in daily life, maybe for each of us during work, we might be faced with decisions of where we just actually consume what is being put in front of us. Like we are kind of a part of the ecosystem part of whatever is like we are thrown into it? Or are we part of those who create the conditions for our life to happen? And right now, using a lot of technology, internet technology, using like the newer forms of communication, riding on the waves of the new business models that are about to emerge, that are every day being launched by creative people, by courageous people, by people who are kind of tired, bored, or thinking that the existing models are not very efficient. So they come and create new projects. And at this very moment in history, in our very young human history, we have the chance to make use of technology to contribute to a shift that puts us in a position from consumer, just consuming or being consumed by what is happening around us, to our beloved ones, to becoming the creators of something new. And that shift is driven by the macro trend that costs of setting up businesses, costs of running businesses, costs of collaboration with talent, connecting with talent, cost of raising funds is decreasing. So the merit of the internet, or the opportunities, is that now all of us can work together even without needing to meet each other in Nigeria, or you don't need to fly to Munich to contribute to a project that I'm building, right? Vice versa, which is kind of a very revolutionary shift. So that is like at the basis or the foundations of the Web3 ecosystem, Web3 economy. The first, in the economy of the future, basically, the ones who are thriving are the ones who go from consumer to contributor. Contributor does not necessarily mean you have to create something new, but you can become a contributor in a shaping, in a owning position, in any kind of project out there. There are already situations like that already. Web3 is quite an international barrier-free market, in the sense that most of the companies or projects out there recruiting are willing to take you in even without the very traditional kind of westernized career track where you have to have like the CV, that perfect CV with that perfect work experience, with that perfect university degree, right? Technology creates job opportunities where you can come in as a person from the side, which is breaking things up and disrupting. The second point I want to make today in today's talk is, how do we actually, having committed to be a contributor, a creator in that new ecosystem, how can we navigate that ecosystem most effectively? And that requires some kind of understanding of Web3 and all of this. This is why we created Unit Masters, and you are already dedicating, by being here present with us, a significant share of your weekly available time to invest into your own study process. So we have made it very simple for you guys to look into navigating that Web3 ecosystem. The first thing within it is to need to understand the value chain, because it's an ecosystem that is made up of several groups of actors who all have different interests and have all different value contributions to the ecosystem, right? So you would think of it as an economy of different actors who contribute different services that together make the Web3 ecosystem. And the best way to understand it is to understand the value chain, and then to understand what actually is needed to have that value chain. What is the value chain? The value chain, in the simplest way to think about it for our use case, is to think, okay, I'm new to the ecosystem. I want to buy something in that ecosystem. I want to buy a service. I want to hold an asset in that ecosystem. That asset might be a digital asset, because we are in the internet economy, right? So we have digital assets, and that asset might be Bitcoin. Yeah, we heard about Bitcoin. How many of you actually in the room, just maybe by sign of hands, like are actually already owning any kind of digital asset, whichever? Okay, quite half of you. Hopefully by the end of the 6 weeks, or actually by today's session, you kind of get a hold of your first digital assets, as long as it's within the permissions of the country that you're residing in. So let's assume we all want to hold a Bitcoin, because we want to not only be consuming in that ecosystem, we want to be a contributor, we want to be the ones who set the rules. But first, we have to kind of get access to that valuable good in that economy. So how do we actually get access to our first digital asset? Right? And that already is kind of the learning, because then we would go on the internet and search and figure out, wow, where can I buy digital assets if I wanted to hold them? And that typically you will find a place called an exchange. Yeah, it's the same way as if you were in Nigeria or Vietnam and you wanted to buy US dollars, then you basically need to find an instance that gives you the opportunity to buy that asset, or you find an organization where you can contribute that rewards you in that asset. Right? So two ways, like either you get a gift from someone, or you go and find an exchange where you can buy it either digitally, or you pay cash to what we call an over-the-counter provider, or you work for someone who already has those digital assets and you earn your first digital asset. Right? But that helps kind of to understand, oh, if somebody has the need to buy into an asset, then we need an exchange. So exchanges are the places where you can buy and also you can sell again your digital asset, whichever that is. And then we have heard about exchanges. What do we do next? Best is, in our experience, to look into, in your local region, what are the most popular exchanges? And then you would find a few names. And you would maybe, if you were in the Western, like America or in Europe, you would find names such as Coinbase or Binance or Kraken or crypto.com. I don't know, whatever. In every country, there's different providers that offer these services. And the way why we ask you in the Unit Masters program in week 2 to look into the different ecosystem players and looking into the brand names is to give you a feeling when you read the news, the press about releases, and you hear brand names, that you're like, okay, this brand I've heard before. Binance, oh, that's an exchange. That means when there's news about exchanges and Binance setting up a location in some country, maybe your country, then it means, oh, okay, there's a service where I can go and buy digital assets or sell digital assets, or we call it trading. So then how does actually your local currency, US dollars or Naira or the Vietnamese dong or the Swiss francs, the euros, how do these get onto the digital world? And this is something we call on-ramping services. Old system, but fiat currencies, and then we on-ramp it into the cryptocurrency world. So yeah, if we want to buy something, we might face that term that we need on-ramping, turning our existing currency into digital assets. And then, okay, now we have an exchange. And when you kind of get into that game of understanding the different brands, the names, getting a feeling for how their products look like, you will be already like ahead of a lot of people, because you have developed something like familiarity with the real stakeholders of that crypto economy. While you're researching them, you will probably find out they have a lot of events, community events, grants, scholarship programs that you can tap into. Some of the exchanges, when you use their services, they have something like quizzes. You have to do quizzes for 2 reasons. One is like of regulatory reason, so that they make sure that they comply to certain national regulations of keeping the customers safe and having only customers who know what they're doing. And second, for marketing. Most of the digital asset companies that produce digital assets have marketing, like sponsorship agreements with these exchanges, where when you do the quiz and learn about that digital asset, you earn money. It's called learn to earn, right? So wow, you might sometimes don't even need to buy the digital asset, but you can work your words, you can earn it by learning. So that's the Web3 ecosystem of exchange. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I have the crypto, but how do I keep it safe? Yeah, should I leave it on there, like leave it up in my bank? Or is there any way to protect it against, but protect it against what? So in the Web3 ecosystems, in general, when we think about the value of a digital asset, typically we want to protect it from inflation, right? Some economies have heavy inflation, and the same happens in the crypto economies. What is actually inflation? Inflation is when the buying power of your digital asset or your asset at hand decreases, right? And how does this typically happen? It typically happens when more money is put into a market, right? So for example, in the beginning, in the entire market, there's only $100 and 100 apples. And then one price of the apple is $1. But when the government start to print more money and put in another $100, then we have $200. But we have only 100 apples still. So the price of the apple has doubled because there's $200 wanting to buy 100 apples, right? That's what we call inflation. And that's the same what is happening in the crypto economies. Some digital assets that stand for different economies, and I will get to that in a second, they follow certain schedules of releasing more of their digital assets into their economy. And what it means is there is some kind of inflation, and you want to know how you can protect your asset, because now you have one Bitcoin. But what if there's more Bitcoin coming into the market, which happens still? Then we have to learn, oh, okay, in order to keep protected from inflation, these are the things I can do. And then in the Web3 economy, in that ecosystem, there's different ways to do that. Some of them are called like staking. Staking is a term, and you will learn that in week 4. Staking is when you put your asset to work for you and can gain some kind of an interest. Yeah, so in that way, you can protect your asset from inflation. It means like you accumulate more assets, but this more asset is actually normalized away because also there is more assets in the market. So the relative buying power of your asset is actually not really increasing, even when in absolute numbers you hold more of that asset in your account, in your wallet. So what we mean with blockchain literacy is to be able to understand the fundamentals of certain mechanisms in the ecosystem so that you can make informed decisions of how you want to navigate and thrive in that ecosystem. Then wallets, we talked about wallets, and it's like, oh, now I have bought, somehow I have gained access to one Bitcoin. but now should I, what can I do with it? Should I leave it where I bought it? Typically in Web3, we say, not your keys, not your crypto. That comes from the original understanding that inside the blockchain economy, from becoming a consumer, like from going from the consumer to a contributor to an owner. And you own only what you can really, without intervention from any other third party, access any time in the world that you want. And in blockchain, that is something that is quite possible, because once you hold assets in your own custody, and there we have wallets that are called non-custodial wallets, then basically you are the only person who has the right to access and move these digital assets from your account to another person's account. Yeah? You are in complete control of your own assets. And this is great if you are in a situation where you do not trust your government, your banks, to keep your assets safe, protected for you at any time. And we had a few of these situations across the globe, right, where banks shut down because of wars, because of capital controls. We have that like a lot in Turkey, Argentina, Lebanon, like areas of crisis, Russia, Ukraine. So for some residents of economies, sometimes it's not so easy to access their assets in their banks. So they had been looking for different ways to store assets. And their crypto economies might offer some good solution, in particular decentralized cryptocurrencies. But the downside is, wow, you are your own bank. If you lose your keys, you lose your assets, right? So in order to navigate that Web3 economy in a safe way, it's important to understand the differences in types of wallets, differences of how to keep your assets safe and accessible to yourself at any time that you want to access them, because you worked hard for them. So that's wallets. And then we go into week 3, we go a bit deeper into understanding, okay, decentralized blockchains, consensus mechanism, all of that technical stuff that is very geeky and nerdy and sounds a bit, not so interesting for people who don't care too much about mathematics and tech and cryptography. But it's important to understand the basic mechanisms, to understand what is keeping these assets actually secure. So in week 3, we talk about proof of work, proof of stake. And I repeat these terms already now because over the course of time, when you start to go and speak about the message of blockchain or the benefits of it, you will always hear one argument, one counter argument, or one concern that people have. And it's like, oh, it's wasting a lot of energy. Like Bitcoin is that wastes a lot of energy. All crypto must be, polluting environment, bad for climate. And what is good for you then to be able to understand for yourself also is that true? Is that concern a real concern? Yes or no? And there are valid points to both sides. But what we want you to know is that there's proof of work, which as we're speaking is still a technology that consumes a lot of energy. And then there's proof of stake, because obviously people have been building these ecosystems and a lot of them have also been caring about climate change. So they have built technologies that use less electricity. But these technologies typically come at the downside of other things. So what is the trade-off between like decentralization, between security, between throughput volume, like the efficiency of the fastness, the speed of the transactions on that ecosystem? All of these things you will need to learn how to navigate. And then because it's a decentralized ecosystem, it also means that there are actors in the ecosystem that provide these services of securing your assets. And so we ask you to go and do research on these different players. And when you read their name or their brands, see their logos in any kind of newspaper articles or in the crypto magazines, then you get a good understanding of what do they stand for, what do they represent, what is their service model, what is the business model to which they generate revenue, and how is your relationship to these actors in the ecosystem? Yeah, why are they important or not important to you? Or why would you want to contribute to that part of the ecosystem, or even contribute to the part that regulates and inhibits that ecosystem? Yeah, because if you are entering into the ecosystem as a novice, it's a greenfield. Like you could be a contributor to any part of the ecosystem, but then first you have to understand along the value chain of digital assets, to holding them in custody, to providing places to buy and sell them, to taking them off and converting them into US dollars. Who are the big players and what are their tasks and services? And what are my personal feelings about them? So this will lead me to the third point I want to make for today. The third point is understanding. Understanding ecosystems actually requires understanding of the actors in the ecosystems which create these ecosystems, right? So the actors in that ecosystems, that is us. We are the ones, like we and our fellow human beings are the ones who are shaping and building and contributing products and services or consuming power to all these different stakeholders in the ecosystem. and understanding us, ourselves, our behaviors, our relationships, our attitudes towards these actors can inform us about our choices, which actors we want to support with our capital, with our attention and interest, with our own activity, time, and labor. So understanding ourselves, understanding, this is funny thing because when we speak about understanding, it's always like thinking about two things: to stand under something. What is the bigger vision that we stand under? The bigger vision for our own life, right? This is a very personal question. That everyone has a different vision of how they want to contribute with their work in this lifetime to whatever they want to contribute. I guess there's no right or wrong. So what do I stand under? And then the second interesting meaning about understanding is, if you really understand something, it needs to travel from a concept, an idea that is maybe in your head, through your body into your feet. You stand under it. So it requires traveling an embodied experience. That means also to reflect upon, what is my heart, my values saying towards this? How much do I feel resonance with what I'm seeing? Where do I still have concerns that I want to address? Or maybe that I also see that nobody's working on addressing these concerns, so I can come in and contribute to that. What are the actions that really make me feel happy? So it's like the brain, the understanding, the vision, the eyes, the seeing, looking at things like, you know, in an informed way. That's why we have Unit Masters program, to help you get that knowledge, that literacy about the different actors in the ecosystem in a short time period, so you can make informed decisions. But then also we have optionally modules in the course portal that help you get understanding of yourself, your values, your sweet spot in life, so that you can see, understand, be literate about things, and align with your contributions. And you might as well, and we've had these graduates who come out of the course and like, wow, this ecosystem is full of greed. I'm actually wanting to regulate it. I will go and help the government cut down on the scammers in the ecosystem. Right, so that is a free choice, but the free choice starts with understanding what I care about in this world, understanding the competences that I can build through the Web3 economy, through participating in that ecosystem, and then developing the vision for my life. So I guess, long story short, Web3 is really the internet of value. And we are at a stage where we still have a few years left of a time window to shape that ecosystem in a way we feel it should be shaped. About 5-7 years from now, I think it will be too late, where we will just be takers of the ecosystem, because the ecosystem has been built by that time, right? And then it's just about allocation of value that had already been created and settled. But now, thanks, lucky for us, I would say, we are in a stage of the entire industry that we can still shape. Why I'm saying that is, currently the total market value of Web3 is just about $1 trillion US, with the Bitcoin at about $23,000 today. It was 60,000 a few months back. Now it's only 23,000. A few weeks ago, it was only 18,000. So, you know, it's very volatile. And the market is maybe 1% of the total equities market. Equity market meaning like all the stock of all the companies being traded. So we are maybe, in a simplified way, we're at 1% of the size of the entire economy in Web3, which means there's a lot of upside to grow. Knowing that all of this is driven by technology companies. And when we look at the economy today, technology companies are among the most valuable companies of the world. Technology companies such as Apple, Amazon, Meta, Tesla, and so on. Technology companies of the future will be the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, the units, the Avalanches, Polkadots, and so on of the future, right? And all of them are so small compared to the existing market. So when you would think of Web3 as a human lifespan. I personally think we are at the stage where that baby is about to crawl, or maybe it can already walk a few steps. And all of us, with the opportunity to co-parent, to shape and nourish that baby and guide it towards becoming a mature baby that benefits humanity and not benefits only a minority of humanity. But that also requires all of us to jump in, like to be at our best with all the curiosity we can bring into the ecosystem, with the conscious and informed action we can take, and also with bringing in more of those people who currently are left behind or left outside of that pocket of value creation, that pocket of opportunities. And this is why we have built the study group leads, so that there are peers for you to go on that journey together, for you to take over one of these contributor positions and inspire others in case you feel inspired yourself. Right? But as of now, you are a student in that, but you are not a consuming student, you are a contributing student. You're contributing to that course with your questions, with your acts of support, helping each other along the way, with your feedback to our amazing program leads like Agama, Joy, who bring unit masters to the entire world. So I will leave it here and open up the room for any kind of questions that may arise, or any kinds of sharings you feel like, wow, I need to express that because it's something dear to my heart and it needs out. And I've already seen a few hands risen also.
Thank you very much, Yip. It's been an amazing session. And every one of you is actually muted. You're not able to unmute yourself. So if you'd like to say something, you can raise your hand and I will ask you to unmute and make your contributions or ask your questions. But I do have two questions here already in the chat. And the first is by Ni Osei, who wants to know if he needs to worry about hackers when looking into protecting crypto assets.
Yes, Ni, that is a very fair point. A lot of value had been lost because of hackers. So as products are being launched, and because these products are products that are attached to value, there's a really big incentive for hackers to hack into these, what we call the honeypots, right? So a lot of times it's very important, for example, when you use a public wireless system, that you use like your own VPN when you want to access your wallet and do transactions, because you don't want to do transactions of value when everybody could follow your transactions. You don't want to do it in the middle of the room, for example. So yeah, hacking is kind of a legitimate risk factor. So you want to protect yourself from that, but very similar also to the way you don't want people to get your passwords when you have bank accounts, online bank accounts, to do any kind of transactions, or you don't want to be hacked with your social media profiles, right? And it's the same, just with more caution even needed, because it's not about your social media data being stolen, but it's about your assets being stolen, digital assets. But there's a lot of content about how to keep your assets safe online. Very good question.
All right, thank you. Yep, I hope that answer has been received by the sender. And so I would ask Larry Paynes to unmute and ask your question or make your contribution. And afterwards, we'll have Chukwu David and then Joseph Aswani. Please go ahead. Okay, so can we have Chukwu David or Joseph Aswani?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hear you very well.
Yeah, hi. Good day, Thy-Diep. I don't know. I can't pronounce your name very well, but I must say it's been an interesting time, honestly, on this program today. And I don't just know why, but um, I think this is the best live session I've enjoyed so far since this cohort 14 started. And because you're a very good communicator, and everything was so practical, was so demonstrative, and there are things I actually knew before, but I didn't have a better understanding. But as you were saying it, I was like, wow, and when you talked about the staking dimension with regards to inflation, you know, and I was like, really? And that blew my mind, exactly, honestly. So I really say that this section was a very striking one for me. And I happen to be a group lead, a study group lead, and being here has been very interactive, and I've really actually learned a lot. And for me, I'm very optimistic. It's very obvious that the blockchain, the crypto industry, the crypto is actually just like a unit of what the blockchain can do exactly. So but the blockchain technology and the ecosystem actually for me is the future of the world. And it's a thing I'm encouraging every young person I know around me to get involved into it, because so that we don't get into it when it's become too late. So I'm very, very privileged and happy to be here today. And I must say that your live session was quite interesting, and this is the best I've ever received since I began this course. Thank you for being a resourceful and a valuable person to every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you for leading the study groups. Yeah, that's the kind of contribution that inspires others to learn and build Web3, because a lot of solutions are not built yet. So a lot of growth opportunities materially too.
Yeah, so can we have the next person? We have Joseph Aswani and Ansela Crypto Anti. Right, please go ahead, either one of you.
Okay, I'll go since I'm unmuted. Good greetings, because there are different times of day, right? People here from all over the world. But yeah, what David said is exactly accurate. Your presentation was fantastic. I want to applaud Unit Masters and everything that you're doing, because so many people are coming into the crypto and Web3 space without accurate and adequate information. And it's so important, like you said, to bring in more people as we grow the ecosystems, make sure people have a good understanding of not only the potential income, but also the opportunities that the technology offers. So I just wanted to lend my voice to say thank you all so much for all the work that you're doing. Even though I've been in crypto since 2017, I wanted to get more understanding of the technology side, so my understanding is more well-rounded. So I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I want to just thank everyone for everything, like the Disruptor DAO. I'm loving what you guys are doing. I'm having a great time and just happy to be a part.
Thank you, Ansela, for holding the space for the community to grow. And yeah, Disruptor DAO is one of the leaders in that industry. Thank you so much, Joy.
Thank you so much, amazing students. There's a question from Abhishek Bengal, who wants to know if there are any essential documents or resources to follow for beginners. I'd like to say that on our content management platform, we do have resources that you can use, and I'll be sharing that later on today. And you can also contribute, like you find links to tutorials, to articles that you believe would further enrich the learning experience of other students. We are more than happy to receive them from you. And so there's a question here from Toby Adeogun, and he wants to know what's the difference. Okay, what's that thing that defines a coin as Bitcoin or Ethereum? That's his question.
Yeah. So originally, when these different blockchain ecosystems developed, they developed similar to very independent nations. Right? So you would imagine Bitcoin as an independent nation with its own currency and with its own culture, with its own set of decision makers or the government of that ecosystem. And because it's also a different technology, then there is other ecosystems that came up with different technologies. And these technologies, like with a different coin, called Ethereum, like with a different currency. And these ecosystems typically, until very recently, were not able to communicate with each other because they are built with different programming languages. They have a different asset structure. So what was lacking until very recently, a few years ago, was what we call interoperability. And so what happened was all these different crypto nations, like Ethereum was its own, Avalanche was its own, Near was its own, Ethereum was its own. And they basically, you can think of them as tribal lineages. First, there was like this blockchain ecosystem. Then there was the second one that's now known as Ethereum. And out of Ethereum, because then the founders of Ethereum had different ideas and visions of how to build the crypto economy, they split. And one became Cardano, what we nowadays know with like ADA. One became Polkadot, which is nowadays the blockchain that stands for interoperability. It has a few competitors. So it's not only Polkadot, but there's like Cosmos and Avalanche. So the different players, they went out to build different pieces of the ecosystem. And traditionally, a coin is like that asset that is being used on the network as the native asset. But then some newer blockchains, they are decentralized world computers. So what it means is they are platforms on which you can build other platforms. Ethereum is one of these platforms where you have the native Ethereum coin, which is the coin of the Ethereum blockchain. But on top of the Ethereum blockchain, you can build decentralized applications. And these decentralized applications typically have their own currency. And these currencies that are like on top of a native blockchain are called tokens, typically, and originally not called coins. I would say it's not a universal definition though. So when people speak about coins, they typically mean it's like the native asset of the base layer infrastructure. So like Bitcoin would be a coin, Ethereum would be a coin, whereas Uniswap or something that had been built on top of Ethereum would be called a token, right? It's just technical details, and a lot of people confuse all of these things so that there's not like a very standard definition.
Okay, thank you. Yep. So there's another question here from Amanda, who wants to know what the practical steps to take as community builders to further develop Web3.
Yes, that's really amazing question. So typically as a community builder, that's what like people love. Like that's when you are in a position where every ecosystem wants you to join their ecosystem because you're the one bringing, like promoting their products to the external world. So typically what you can do as a community builder is host online sessions, like events or in-person sessions, events, and you can apply for grants for doing that. So let's say you live in Lagos, Nigeria, and you have 200 people who always come to your events, then you can apply for grants from any of the blockchains, such as Avalanche, Near, Unit Network, Polkadot, and get a little bit of a budget to host events that bring the technology to the consumers. And typically what people need your help for and reward you for is when you help them get customers, users. Users in the blockchain space of today are typically people who open up a wallet for that blockchain ecosystem. So what we call in the Web3 space is typically community building activities are user building activities where a user is somebody who uses the blockchain services of any kind of the blockchains out there.
Great. Thank you, Yip, for that detailed answer. So there's another question here by Abdul Aziz. He wants to know when the tokenized economy visualized by blockchain happens, what will happen to the equity market of today? Will it still be in operation, or will it be fully disrupted by blockchain?
Yeah, that's a question like looking into the glass, like the glass ball fortune telling is very difficult to say. In my personal view, it will be a complementary thing. It will not be that we will not have the countries now as we have them nowadays, or the markets that we have them nowadays, but will a gradual kind of shift. And that shift, the success of that shift and the speed of that shift will depend on the cost savings that this technology can offer or not, also in alignment with regulation. So already you are seeing a few trends. Just 2 or 3 days ago, there was an announcement that one of the famous funds is now being tokenized. So what it offers is each of us can actually own a piece of a fund, and that fund invests into more projects, and then the wealth will be spread across a bigger group of consumers, rather than nowadays it's very costly to invest into a fund, right? If in certain jurisdictions, when you want to invest into a company, you have to have net assets of $1 million US. Like in America, for example, if you are an angel investor, you have to be accredited and you have to fulfill certain wealth requirements, which obviously is a very high barrier to entry. With technologies, like you can make that, lower that cost of barrier, because you can own a smaller piece of an entity because it's tokenized. And that makes it very cheap. Like technology makes it very cheap, and thereby it's affordable for operators to allow small holders, which typically doesn't make sense if you have like just a small company and then you have 20,000 owners. You have to take 20,000 people to the notary and sign paperwork contracts for like each giving $10. That doesn't make sense. But because technology brings down the costs, I think we are very close to seeing tokenized ownership of a lot of different assets. But it will be a question of which countries will support that first and has also the infrastructure and the access to the capital markets to drive that to a bigger scale. And just a few months ago, there was the first tokenized government bond, I believe. So now you can already buy government bonds as tokens because they use underlying blockchain infrastructure instead of like the centralized databases. Still very small markets.
Awesome. So I hope that that answer was well received by the poster. Ganesh wants to know, how can we apply for grants to organize events? So quickly, I'd like to say that if you're interested in organizing events for units, you can always speak to the community leads on Telegram, via Telegram, right? And then we'll help you with the process to follow. So I'm looking for any more questions here. Okay, so I think that the questions have been covered. And I'd like to once again say thank you to you for such an amazing presentation. And like you have said, we do have a role to play to continue to shape the Web3 reality that we want to see in the next few years. And I'm really glad that many of you are here, Unit Masters, and we're hoping that beyond the 6 weeks training, you would begin to actively participate and contribute in Web3. And we're here to support you through our various initiatives that you'll get to find out as you progress. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Yip, for being here today. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for the next demo session. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone, and reach out to us anytime. And tomorrow, please get like on the hands-on workshops led by Alex to really give you the technical knowledge and the foundations to operate in that ecosystem of token.